what, there'll be schools up and down the country liking the sound of what you're suggesting as well this morning. You're going to improve education standards. It's £7 billion for school buildings, capping class sizes at 30 pupils, nearly 20,000 more teachers. It's like a Christmas wish list.
Well, what we're actually doing is we're reversing what the Tories have done over the last 9 years, and that's, you know, many parents here would be shocked to find that children are being taught by unqualified teachers more and more in the classroom. And what we've said is that we should have a qualified teacher in the classroom, and that class sizes have been increasing. Under the last Labour government, they were capped at 30, but because the government have missed its teacher recruitment and retention targets for the last 7 years, those class sizes have increased significantly. So we're going to introduce today making sure that standards is at the heart of everything that we do, so that every child across England can get the best education that they deserve. Just because a teacher's not qualified or is unqualified doesn't necessarily mean they're not experienced or had good training, and they're a hugely important part of the education system at the moment.
Got thousands of them.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're an integral part of the teaching system.
I think it's important also to recognise that what the government have done by cutting the school budgets is many experienced teachers have left the teaching profession, and more schools are having to just rely on newly qualified teachers to try and balance the books as well. So this isn't about standards for them. This has been about year-on-year cuts. And we've also lost lots of support staff who help the most disadvantaged children in our classrooms, which puts added pressure onto teachers and takes away support from all of the class. So we want to reintroduce those standards that we had under the last Labour government, so that every child can get their best education.
One of the things that the Tories and the Lib Dems have pledged is to increase the starting salary for teachers to £30,000 by 2022. Is that something that you're going to match as well? Because certainly that's going to be an incentive, isn't it, to get more new teachers into the profession?
Yeah, absolutely. Our teachers have faced pay freezes as well, and that we've said we'd lift the pay cap. So teachers that are currently in the classroom deserve pay rises as well, because their standard of living has gone down. They've lost around £4,000 a year since the Tories came into power. So we would give them an immediate uplift of 5%.
Which I think is not quite as much, is it?
The new teachers will start at £30,000, yes.
They will start it, so you're matching what the
new
Tories
teachers would start. The new teachers would start at £30,000, but we'd also raise an uplift for other teachers of 5%, and then obviously we'd bring back collective bargaining, so the pay rises that teachers get, many at the moment, when there's a recommendation by the pay body to pay teachers, of course, a lot of schools don't implement that, and it's often underfunded, so schools have had to face those costs as well, which has added to the burden that schools have found themselves in, and why head teachers have had to ask parents to subsidise their children's education, which is not acceptable.
Yeah.
You know, we should be investing in skills.
Let's move from education to the NHS. A few days ago, Jeremy Corbyn made the headlines and a very big deal, saying to the population that the NHS was for sale, with proof in these documents, leaked documents, that it had been a subject of trade talks between officials. That seems, to most people, to have been comprehensively debunked now. The NHS was only mentioned a handful of times. And then we have President Trump coming over, because you're accusing the Americans of wanting to buy up parts of the NHS. President Trump made it absolutely categorically clear that that wasn't the case. Now, you might, you know, not stand by what the Conservatives and the American president says, but, I mean, they have made a promise to the electorate. The NHS is not for sale. You don't have proof that the NHS is going to be sold off. Do you think that that has been undermined now?
I don't, Susanna, and if you'd have played other clips, not only from when Donald Trump came over with Theresa May not long ago, who said that the NHS was on the table, actually, so he's had two contradictory statements. It's only now we're in a general election that they're both saying that the NHS isn't on the table. Boris Johnson has made comments which makes me concerned in the past about what he thinks of our NHS being in the public sector.
But we know that all leaders, all leaders and politicians have said things in the past, as you know, in your party. But the fact of the matter is that in this election campaign, the Conservatives have said that no government would sell off the NHS. You know, it's our prized possession. It simply isn't up for grabs. We spoke to the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, who says that it would be a deal breaker in a post-Brexit deal with the Americans. They simply wouldn't sell off parts of the NHS to the Americans. And you say President Trump said one thing when he was in that press conference with Theresa May. Well, only a few minutes after that, he sat down with Piers and said this.
No leader, it seems to me, would allow Britain to effectively sell the NHS as part of a trade deal. Would you, as the American president, see that as a deal breaker if none of the NHS was on the table?
I don't see it being on the table. Somebody asked me a question today, and I say everything's up for negotiation, because everything is. But I don't see that being. That's something that I would not consider part of trade. That's not trade.
It's not on the table.
It's just absolute baloney. They've been having discussions about it. We know that the US pharma companies want to get a change of patent so they can charge us more. Our NHS has been, by stealth, having the private sector introduced since the Langsley Act. We know that that's happening. That's the truth.
Well, under a Labour government, there was the PPI issue over hospitals.
My leader of our party has always said and maintains that the NHS will not be for sale. I'm sorry, but Boris Johnson has made contradictory statements before, and so's Donald Trump. And they're only making the statements they're making now because they don't want the British people to be worried that their NHS is for sale
to
the Americans.
Okay.
But let me tell you, it might not be lock stock on eBay tomorrow, but it will be for sale if the Tories get a majority. And once that happens, it's gone.
So we have to believe your leader. We can't believe other leaders. That's interesting because tonight...
my leader's never said that. My leader, Susanna...
No, but we have to believe your leader when he says that the NHS will never be up for sale.
No, because, Susanna, my leader has never, ever, ever inferred in any way, shape or form that the NHS would be. However, Boris Johnson has made statements in the past.
OK, so we need to believe... OK, Angela, I understand what you're saying. So we need to believe what your leader says because your leader never tells us fibs. Is that right?
Well, I'm saying that our leader has never said that our NHS would ever go into the private sector.
I understand that. So
Boris Johnson has said that.
OK. The reason I'm asking that, about whether your leader ever dissembles, says things which aren't entirely true, is because tonight he has done an interview with Julie Etchingham, and in it she asked him what he does on Christmas Day.
Angela, why can't he just be honest? Why didn't he just say, we don't see the Queen's speech, we're very busy on Christmas Day, so we don't get a chance to watch it?
Well, I mean, he might watch it on catch-up. Some of us do. Some of us have our dinner at different times, you know.
He said he watched it in the morning.
That he's lied and that he's going to sell off the NHS. I mean, this is clutching at straws. You've not played any clips of what Boris Johnson has said about the NHS in the past. You've only played the clips that you believe gives them the evidence
you're the Shadow Education Secretary for Labour, though, Angela. That's why we're bringing up your leader.
Yeah, but of course, but you've played clips that you're saying that because Jeremy Corbyn said that he watched the Queen's speech in the morning, which, by the way, he could do on catch-up, you're suggesting that means that he's unreliable and untrustworthy. But Boris Johnson is trustworthy because he suddenly said that the NHS isn't up for sale and Donald Trump has. But they've both said in the past that the NHS could be in the private sector and could be part of trade deals, and yet you've not played any of those clips. So I think that's not very balanced. Jeremy Corbyn
Angela Rayner,
has made
to be
clear
fair,
that our
job
NHS
is
will never
to
be up for
challenge
sale.
you on Labour Party policy and you on your claims and you on your leader's claims. But I'm happy to deal with that, but please play a balanced clip. I'm telling you that Boris Johnson and Donald Trump have both made comments in the past that mean that I don't believe that what they've said just because we're in a general election about the NHS is true. Now, Jeremy Corbyn, and whether he watches the Queen's speech exactly at that time or not, is a different matter. Now, if Jeremy Corbyn watches it on catch-up the next morning, that's fine. I mean, I watch the Queen's speech. Sometimes I watch it at 3. Sometimes I'm in the middle of the dinner and I watch it on catch-up. He didn't say he watched it on
normal behaviour from most people.
Angela Rayner, sorry to interrupt. Jeremy Corbyn did not say he watched the Queen's message on catch-up the following morning. He said he watched the Queen's message in the morning on Christmas Day. I mean, I don't understand why he
didn't say that. He did not say he watched it in the morning on Christmas Day.
He said he watched it in the morning.
One of the problems here One of the problems here is there will be people watching this morning who have seen the clip and they'll see the interview that Julie does with your leader, and they will just watch it.
Yeah,
and you're trying to defend him, and that's very admirable, of course, because he is your leader. But they will watch it and they will know exactly what he's doing. He's trying not to sound like he doesn't watch the Queen's message on Christmas Day because that might be unpatriotic. And rather than just saying, look, I don't get to see it because I have a very busy Christmas Day. But it's so difficult for us to watch you trying to sort of find a way to excuse or explain what he said, rather than just going, I wish you would just been honest.
I don't think I have to excuse it. Do you know what? I don't, because I don't think I have to excuse it, because most people on Christmas Day, depending on what happens, are normally very busy with a family. They do watch the Queen's speech. They might watch it exactly at 3 o'clock. They might watch it a bit later. Now, Jeremy Corbyn said he watches the Queen's speech in the morning. Now, that doesn't mean to say he watches it on Christmas Day morning. He said he watched it in the morning. He says he also visits a homeless shelter.
Which is amazing.
You know, he does, and he does do that.
Which is amazing.
He spends time with his family.
And you know what, Angela Rayner, if he had just said, I spend time with the family and then I go to a homeless shelter, no one would have criticised him. But he said he watched the Queen's message in the morning. Now, are you saying he doesn't watch it on Christmas Day morning, he watches it on Boxing Day morning? Is that the position? Is that what he meant to say?
Susanna, I don't know. I'm not with Jeremy Corbyn on Christmas Day. I'm with my own family on Christmas Day. What I'm saying is from my own experience. I watch programmes sometimes, and I don't know. Sometimes I watch them on catch up. Sometimes I watch it on the daytime, on the time it's at. Most kids these days, including my kids, watch it on YouTube or whatever else. They don't watch normal TV on the times that we have it. So it can be confusing about which times people watch something at, because you don't have to watch it like we used to do when I was a kid at the time that's specified within the TV guide. People watch it at different times now. I can't tell you what Jeremy does on Christmas morning. Jeremy could tell you that.
Well,
yeah, he tried, I know we've kept you longer than we should have, so I do apologise for that. We do appreciate you joining us in very Christmassy-looking Salford this morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Will you be watching it on Christmas Day?
Thank you. I always do. My kids are named after kings. I've got a James and a Charles. Oh, so you're not a Republican, Angela Rayner, because that's the criticism levelled against Jeremy Corbyn. No, I've got a James, Stuart and a Charles named after the kings. So, no, I like my Queen and I love my Queen's speech, and I'll be watching it.
Brilliant. Just let Jeremy Corbyn know what time it's on, so whether he's watching it on the day or the next day. Angela Rayner, thank you for joining us this morning.